People assume families break in loud moments, slammed doors, shouted names, lawyers at the table. Mine didn't. My family broke in silence, then rewired the story to make it look intentional. My name is Adrienne Locke, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed I had no inheritance and no claim to anything my bloodline built. My mother told me when I was 18 that my grandfather died with debt, that the family ranch in North Carolina had been sold to cover what he owed, and that the rest was a closed chapter. I believed her. For 16 years. Then a letter arrived from a law firm I had never heard of, addressed to my old apartment before it was forwarded. No explanation, just a 5-line notice. You are listed as the final living heir of the Locke estate. Probate hearing scheduled in 48 days. Parties contesting your eligibility have filed intention to challenge. I thought it was a scam until I saw the signature at the bottom. Isabel Haynes, Probate Court Registrar. Real name. Real office. I called my mother that night. She didn't act confused. She acted inconvenienced. Who contacted you? She asked, not what is this about? I read the letter word for word. She was silent for 10 seconds too long. You're not going to North Carolina, she said. I own what's left. You don't know what owning it costs. And you do. She didn't answer. Just said, walk away and you can still have your life, then hung up like she was cutting a wire. I didn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I searched the estate records myself, and there it was, Locke Timber Holdings, 442 acres, still held under a family trust that had not filed taxes in 12 years. No transfer. No sale. No foreclosure. Someone had lied for a very long time. The next morning, I called the courthouse and confirmed the hearing date. Then I took 3 days off from my job at a corporate architectural firm and drove to Hawthorne County, the place my mother swore was nothing but debt and dirt. The land wasn't dead. It was sealed. A rusted gate blocked the private road leading to the property. A metal marker was welded to the post, LT9. The padlock was new. The fence was not. I stood there for a long time, gravel cracking under my shoes, trying to reconcile the image in front of me with the version my mother curated for years, the story where there was nothing left. When I turned to leave, a white pickup I didn't hear approached from the curve in the road. A man stepped out. Mid-50s. Work boots. Knew where he was. You're on private access, he said. This is Locke land, I replied. His eyes narrowed just slightly. Not anymore. Who owns it then? He didn't blink. People who take care of what others abandoned. I'm Adrienne Locke. For a second, his face changed, not shock. Recognition. He didn't speak again. He got back in the truck and drove past me, through the gate, with a key he didn't bother hiding. And that told me everything. Someone had been living on land I was told did not exist. And someone had been waiting for me not to show up. I drove into town and found the probate clerk's office in a sandstone building that looked older than the county itself. The receptionist didn't check my ID. She just glanced at my name on the form and said, "They'll try to move the hearing up. Don't let them." They who? I asked. She didn't answer. She slid me a copy of the case file and lowered her voice. You're not the first Locke they tried to erase. You're just the first one who showed up. Back in my car, I read every page. 3 people had filed to contest the inheritance: Miles Harper, Iris Locke, and Evan Toland. I recognized one of those names, Iris. My father's sister. The aunt my mother refused to speak about. There was also a note buried in the file: caretaker occupation permit filed under expansion claim, pending challenge. That meant someone was already trying to turn the land into something profitable. Probably before I was ever notified. At a motel off Route 17, I called my mother again. She answered like she had been staring at the phone. You went there, she said. I met a man with a key to land we supposedly sold. You need to leave before you find something you cannot unlearn. What did you hide? A pause stretched thin. Then she said, your uncle is not your enemy. Iris is not who you think. Your grandfather made promises he could not keep, and others stepped in. The land was leverage. And me. You were the silence that kept it clean. I pressed harder. Who's living there now? She exhaled, tired and cornered. Someone they trust to keep you out. I already saw him, I said. He drove through the gate like he built it. She didn't speak for a moment. When she did, her voice had no softness left. If you open what your grandfather left behind, they will come for you in court first and somewhere quieter second. Who is they? I asked. The people who gained everything when your name disappeared. The line went dead. I printed copies of everything on a portable scanner and stored the originals in a locked case. If they were going to bury the truth again, they would have to dig past me this time. That night, I went back to the property. Not through the main road. There was a boundary fence half collapsed behind a line of pines. I slipped through and followed a deer path until I saw light through the trees. There were 3 buildings on the land, the old house my mother described, a barn reinforced with new timber, and a smaller structure with a metal door and fresh wiring. Someone was investing money in something they did not legally admit existed. As I circled closer, I saw him again. The man from the gate. He was loading crates from the smaller building into the barn. Not tools. Not supplies. Crates marked with shipping codes and a mineral rights logo I did not recognize. I recorded everything on my phone, careful and silent. When I backed away, my boot snapped a branch. He turned. The porch light hit his face full on. You should not be here, he said. I kept my breathing steady. Neither should you, unless you plan on explaining those crates in court. He didn't move closer. He didn't threaten. He said something worse. You think this is about inheritance. It never was. Then what is it? Extraction. He said it plainly, like a fact already paid for. And in that moment, I understood something my mother did not say. They were not fighting over land. They were fighting over what was under it. I didn't run. I walked back through the trees like I had every right to be there, because on paper, I did. In reality, I was trespassing on something much older and uglier than abandoned family property. At the motel, I replayed the video I recorded. The crates weren't random. They had serial codes and tags used by resource extraction firms. Not oil. Not logging. Minerals. And the symbol on the corner belonged to a company called Toland Ridge Holdings. I checked the probate file again. One of the people contesting the inheritance, Evan Toland. They hadn't just occupied the land. They were profiting from it before the estate was even settled. By morning, I had 3 goals. Confirm what was being extracted. Prove they were operating without legal transfer. Find out who helped bury the ownership trail. I started with county archives. The clerk let me into the records room without asking why someone from out of state needed mineral lease documents from the 80s. She pointed to a cabinet with dust on it and said, "Locks always come back through paper, not people." I spent hours scanning titles. Most were legitimate sales and transfers. Then I found it a mineral rights application from 1989, signed by my grandfather but never recorded in the property ledger. The co-signer was M. Harper. Miles Harper. The same man contesting the estate. The same man listed as managing guardian on a caretaker request. My grandfather had made deals under the table, but someone else had carried them into the present. At noon, I left the records office and found someone waiting near my car. A woman in her late 50s with a presence that made space bend around her. "Iris Locke," she said before I could speak. I had seen one picture of her as a child. She looked nothing like the ghost my mother created. "You're late," she said flatly. "For what?" I asked. "For realizing you were not written out. You were written over." She handed me an envelope. "No greeting. No explanation." Then she walked away like she had already said too much. Inside was a photocopy of a handwritten ledger. Dates, parcel codes, payment splits. My grandfather's name on some lines, Harper and Toland on others. One entry had been crossed out and rewritten. Next to it, in the margin, "Keep her off sight. Use the mother." I sat in my car and let the truth settle. They had planned for me before I was old enough to understand what land meant. They had used my mother to keep me out and kept the paperwork quiet until the ground was worth something. And I was not supposed to be here to read it. That night, I drove back to the property. This time I did not hide. I parked in front of the gate and waited. The same white pickup appeared just after sunset. He got out slower than before. "You didn't listen," he said. "You didn't answer," I replied. "What do you think you're going to do with what you saw? Make it real in a place you can't edit. You don't understand what you're stepping into." I don't have to understand it to own it. For the first time, his posture shifted, not fearful, but cautious. "You have until the hearing," he said. "After that, nothing you bring will matter." "Then you better move faster," I said, because I already started. He didn't reply. But as he got back in the truck, he spoke into a radio I could not see. They weren't afraid I would lose. They were afraid I showed up before they finished. By the next morning, my name had quietly disappeared from the motel's guest list. When I asked the clerk why, he said, "Sometimes folks don't want other folks knowing they came back." He didn't look at me when he said it. I drove to the probate attorney listed on the court filing, a man named Harlan Vexley, who represented the opposition. His office was inside a refurbished bank. Polished wood and antique doors meant to make lies feel historic. He didn't invite me to sit. "You're not the first heir to contest what was already resolved." "Resolved how?" I asked. He clasped his hands like he was posing for a portrait. "Your grandfather leveraged the land to settle obligations. His signature is on the agreements." I set the photocopied ledger on his desk. The one Iris had given me. "And whose handwriting is that in the margins?" His expression changed for less than a second. Then he made his own mistake. He said, "You shouldn't have that." Not, "That is fake." Not, "I don't know what that is." Just, "You shouldn't." I left without another word. Next, I called the number assigned to the caretaker company on file. The receptionist refused to give me the field operator's name. I asked one question she couldn't deflect: "Who insures you for mineral transport?" A pause. Papers shuffled. Then she hung up. Good. They were scrambling. By sunset, I had the outline of what happened. My grandfather signed a mineral rights partnership before he died. It was never recorded publicly. After his death, the land was held in limbo instead of liquidated. Someone kept paying taxes under an alias to keep it off the default roll. Then a private group stepped in and used the land to funnel resources while pretending it was abandoned. They planned to finalize ownership through probate by declaring me unfit, uninterested, or non-existent. Except I existed. And I started documenting everything. I went back to the motel and found someone sitting on the curb across the parking lot. Not security. Not family. A woman in her 40s with a courthouse badge clipped to her coat. "You are Adrienne Locke," she said without asking. "Who are you?" "Registrar's assistant. My boss thought you might need context." She handed me a thin folder. No label. No seal. Just one sheet inside a handwritten addendum to the probate notice. The signature was my Aunt Iris's. The date was 9 months ago. It said, "Notify heir only if land transaction fails." I looked up at the woman. "Why give this to me?" "Because probate records don't usually get edited after filing. Unless someone wants time to run out." "Time for what?" She didn't answer. "You have 10 days before your first hearing. If you wait until then, they will file a motion to dissolve claim based on abandonment. Once that's granted, you're a trespasser on your own land. And if I act before that?" She met my eyes. "Then you're a problem they have to face instead of erase." She left before I could thank her. That night, I moved out of the motel and into a short-term rental under a different name. I duplicated every document and mailed one sealed copy to a lawyer I trusted back in Boston, with a 3-word instruction: open if silent. I didn't tell my mother where I was. She already knew. The morning after I moved rentals, I received a message with no sender ID and no text. Just a pinned location and a time: 10 a.m. The pin was on the far edge of the Locke property, near an old surveyor road not listed on any modern map. I went. The road was barely a road at all, gravel swallowed by roots and grass. At the end of it, past a fence so old it held itself up by habit, stood a shed built into a slope. It looked abandoned until I noticed the new hinge bolts and the fresh padlock. Someone was already there. Aunt Iris. She didn't smile. She didn't pretend. She held a ring of keys and a manila folder under her arm. "You were not supposed to see this place before the deal closed," she said. "You sent me the ledger," I replied. "I sent you a warning. What you do with warnings is your burden." She unlocked the shed. The air inside was cooler, holding the weight of things hidden long before I was born. Wooden crates lined the walls, some opened, some sealed. Inside the open ones were mineral samples, maps, contracts, and handwritten notes with signatures that hadn't been traced in decades. One name appeared more than once, my mother's. On agreements she swore never existed. "You think she protected you," Iris said. "She protected the land. You were a side effect." What did she gain? Time, money, distance, and the promise that when you grew up, they would be done with it. But they're not. No. Because your uncle got greedy, and the land was worth more than they expected. Then why help me? Iris shut the crate. "Because they cut me out 2 years ago. And you are the only person with the legal right to ruin them." She handed me the manila folder. Inside were certified copies of titles, mineral surveys, and a transfer agreement that had never been filed. The transferee line was blank. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "Show up to the hearing with this," she said. "Force it into record before they move to exclude you. Once it is entered, the claim cannot be dissolved without your consent. And then you decide whether to burn them or sell them back their own secret." Before I could respond, the crunch of tires cut through the trees. Not one vehicle. Several. Iris closed the shed, relocked it, and stepped back like she had never touched it. 3 black SUVs rolled up the path. The man from the gate, the one who claimed extraction was the point, not inheritance, stepped out first. Behind him, Miles Harper, older, sharper, wearing a coat that didn't belong to someone who worked the land. And then, last, my mother. Calm. Composed. Wearing the face of someone who thinks they can still control the narrative. She looked at me like I was a problem that arrived early. "You were not called to this meeting," she said. "This isn't your land to call meetings on," I answered. Miles spoke before she could. "You can still walk away with more than you started with. Sign a release and we compensate you." "With money you stole from under my name," I said. The man from the gate shifted his stance. My mother's jaw tightened. Iris didn't move or speak. She just watched them unravel. I opened the manila folder and held up the top document, the unfiled transfer with the blank airline. "I'm not here to negotiate," I said. "I'm here to record." They didn't understand at first. Then Miles did. His eyes widened a fraction. My mother finally spoke, soft and precise. "You don't know what happens if you go through with this." "I know what happens if I don't," I said. "You finish erasing me, and they finish digging." No one moved. I turned and walked toward my car. Iris followed. The others stayed frozen between anger and calculation. Back on the main road, Iris said one last thing before leaving in her own truck. "Once it's in court record, they can't discredit you without incriminating themselves. Choose carefully how loud you want your revenge to sound." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already knew my next move. I drove straight to the courthouse, walked into the registrar's office, and filed everything with a timestamp they could not unwrite. They spent years burying the truth under signatures, silence, and soil. I became the one thing they never planned for. Someone who came back.